Arabella thought she was clever recording her mother signing the will. She had no idea that video would cost her £700,000. When 76-year-old Cordelia was dying of dementia, her daughter Arabella physically forced her trembling hand to sign a new will. Then Arabella submitted that same video to court as evidence, thinking it would help her case. The judge called it a grotesque pantomime of due execution, and Arabella lost everything. How did a daughter's greed backfire so spectacularly that she went from inheriting $700K to owing $80K in legal fees? Before we dive into this incredible tale of justice, let me know in the comments what time it is where you're listening, and hit that subscribe button for more stories where silent revenge serves itself. Cordelia Ashworth had worked tirelessly her entire life to build a comfortable estate worth £700,000. At 76, the widow was living with advancing dementia, but she'd made her wishes crystal clear. Her estate would be split equally between her two children, Arabella and Lysander. Cordelia had been a bookkeeper for 30 years before retiring, absolutely meticulous with her finances and scrupulously fair in all her dealings. She'd raised Arabella and Lysander as a single mother after their father abandoned them, working double shifts to put them both through university. As Cordelia's condition worsened dramatically, Arabella became her primary caregiver. Arabella had always been the more demanding child, the one who needed constant financial help for failed business ventures, who saw their mother's declining health as an opportunity rather than a tragedy. Arabella began making calculated, poisonous comments about how Lysander never visits, and how she was the one sacrificing everything to care for Cordelia.
Mom, you know I'm the one who's really here for you. Lysander only calls when he needs something. I'm the one who's given up my entire life for you.
Cordelia's dementia progressed rapidly over the following months. Some days she was lucid and recognized her children. Other days she couldn't remember her own name or where she was. She needed help with basic tasks like eating and dressing, struggled to understand simple conversations, and relied completely on Arabella for survival. That's when Arabella saw her perfect opportunity. If Cordelia was going to die anyway, why should she have to split the inheritance with Lysander? In Arabella's twisted mind, she deserved everything, and Lysander deserved nothing. Arabella began her calculated plan with meticulous research. She investigated local solicitors, specifically looking for someone who wouldn't ask too many uncomfortable questions about an elderly client's mental state. She arranged for them to visit Cordelia at home, claiming it was for routine estate planning updates. When the solicitor arrived on that gray Tuesday morning, Cordelia was having what Arabella coldly called one of her worst days. Cordelia kept asking who the stranger was and why he was in her house, repeating the same terrified questions every few minutes. She couldn't understand why legal papers were being thrust in front of her. "Mom, this is Mr. Henderson from the law firm," Arabella explained with practiced patience. "He's here to help us update your will. You remember we talked about this, don't you?" Cordelia stared blankly, having absolutely no memory of any such conversation because it had never happened. "Mom, you need to sign here," Arabella said, pointing to the signature line with barely contained impatience. Cordelia stared at the document in complete bewilderment, unable to read the legal language or comprehend what she was agreeing to. Cordelia tried desperately to hold the pen, but her hands were shaking violently from medication and confusion. "I don't understand what this is," she whispered, looking around frantically as if seeking help from anyone. "Why do I need to sign something? Where's Lysander? I want my Sander." That's when Arabella made the decision that would utterly destroy her inheritance claim forever. Instead of stopping the process or waiting for Cordelia to be more lucid, Arabella decided to take complete physical control. Arabella moved closer, grabbed Cordelia's trembling hand roughly, wrapped her own fingers tightly around her mother's, and physically forced Cordelia's hand to move across the paper. Cordelia's signature was shaky, uneven, clearly not written under her own control while she whimpered in confusion. And here's the part that sealed Arabella's fate forever. Arabella specifically asked the solicitor to record the entire process on video. She thought the video would show Cordelia had willingly signed the will and serve as ironclad legal proof if anyone dared challenge it. The video captured everything in devastating high-definition detail: Cordelia's obvious terror and confusion, her complete inability to understand what was happening, Arabella's physical control and manipulation of her mother's hand, and the systematic abuse of a vulnerable elderly woman with advanced dementia. Arabella walked away believing she'd secured her inheritance forever and eliminated Lysander permanently from their mother's will. She had no idea she'd just recorded crystal-clear evidence of her own criminal behavior. Cordelia died 6 months later from complications related to her dementia, and Arabella immediately began acting as the sole beneficiary with supreme confidence. She contacted estate agents to get the house valued, began making elaborate plans for the inheritance money, and scheduled meetings with financial advisors to discuss her windfall. When Arabella called Lysander to inform him of their mother's death, she also delivered what she thought would be absolutely devastating news. I should mention that Mum changed her will before she died. She decided to leave everything to me since I was the one actually taking care of her while you were off living your life. Lysander was completely shocked and devastated. That doesn't sound like Mum at all. She always said she wanted to treat us exactly equally. She talked about fairness constantly. But Arabella was fully prepared for this predictable reaction. Presenting evidence, "I have it all documented absolutely perfectly," Arabella told him with supreme smugness. Producing the solicitor was there as an independent witness, everything was recorded properly according to legal standards, and I even have video evidence of Mum signing the will with her own hand. Growing doubts, Lysander spent several sleepless nights agonizing over the situation. Something felt fundamentally wrong about the entire scenario, especially given Cordelia's advancing dementia and Arabella's long history of financial manipulation within the family. He remembered how Arabella had borrowed thousands from their mother over the years and never paid back a penny. Finally, Lysander made the emotionally devastating decision to challenge the will in court. He knew it would be extremely expensive and emotionally draining, but he was willing to fight for what he believed their mother truly wanted: equality and fairness. When Lysander's lawyers formally requested to see all documentation, including the video evidence, Arabella confidently provided everything with absolute certainty. She was completely convinced the video would prove that Cordelia had signed the will properly and legally, making her case unshakable. But when legal experts first reviewed the video footage, they immediately saw something completely different than what Arabella thought she had recorded. Instead of supporting evidence, they were looking at clear documentation of systematic elder abuse. Expert analysis medical experts noted Cordelia's obvious confusion, her complete inability to understand what was happening, and her total lack of mental capacity to make legal decisions. Legal experts pointed out that the video showed unmistakable physical manipulation, coercion, and abuse of a vulnerable adult. Arabella's evidence had become the smoking gun that would completely destroy her case. The very video she thought would secure her inheritance was about to prove she had criminally manipulated a vulnerable elderly woman with advanced dementia. The case went before Judge Jane Evans Gordon at the Central Family Court in London. Arabella's expensive lawyers tried desperately to argue that Cordelia had been mentally competent and willing when she signed the will, but they knew they were fighting a losing battle. The courtroom was packed with legal observers and family members, as video evidence cases were still relatively rare in inheritance disputes. Arabella sat confidently in the front row, still somehow believing her meticulous planning would pay off. Then the moment of absolute truth arrived. They played Arabella's video for the entire courtroom to witness. The courtroom watched in stunned, horrified silence as the footage revealed the horrible truth. A confused, frightened, elderly woman with advanced dementia being physically manipulated and abused by her own daughter to sign legal documents she couldn't understand. Several people audibly gasped and covered their mouths watching Arabella force her mother's trembling hand. Judge Evans Gordon's response was swift and absolutely damning. The judge ruled that Cordelia had no idea what was going on during the will signing and was effectively forced by the physical actions of Arabella into participating in what could only be described as a grotesque pantomime of due execution. The judge went even further, stating the video showed clear and unambiguous proof of systematic undue influence over a vulnerable adult who completely lacked mental capacity to understand the legal document she was being physically forced to sign. The judge declared the new will completely invalid due to Cordelia's obvious lack of mental capacity and Arabella's criminal undue influence. This meant Cordelia's original will, splitting everything equally, remained in full effect. But Arabella's punishment didn't stop there. Because Arabella had knowingly initiated fraudulent proceedings while possessing video evidence of her own wrongdoing, the court ordered Arabella to pay all legal costs for both sides, over £80,000. Let's do the brutal math on Arabella's greed. Instead of inheriting £350,000 as her rightful share, Arabella walked away with absolutely nothing and owed £80,000 in legal fees. Her attempt to steal her brother's inheritance cost her over £430,000 total. Lysander received his full £350,000 inheritance as originally intended by their mother, plus the deep satisfaction of seeing justice served for Cordelia's manipulation and abuse. Word of the case spread rapidly through legal circles and local media. Arabella became infamous as the daughter caught on video abusing her dying mother for money, making her completely unemployable in her small community. The video that Arabella thought would secure her inheritance became the damning evidence that destroyed her case, ruined her reputation, and devastated her finances permanently. Arabella's biggest mistake wasn't just manipulating her vulnerable, dying mother. It was recording the evidence in crystal-clear high definition and voluntarily submitting it to court, thinking it would help, rather than completely destroy her. Sometimes the people who think they're the smartest manipulators in the room are actually setting themselves up for the biggest, most spectacular fall. And sometimes justice comes not from complex legal maneuvering, but from criminals being arrogant enough to document their own crimes. If this story reminds you that greed makes people stupidly overconfident and that elder abuse has serious legal consequences that can destroy your entire life, then maybe you understand what Arabella learned far too late. When you exploit vulnerable family members, the evidence has a way of speaking for itself in the most devastating way possible. What would you have done if you discovered someone manipulating your elderly parent this way? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories where silent revenge serves itself on a silver platter.